Welcome, friends, to Inks and Issues, a podcast where we discuss comics in a book club style format. I'm the 18th Horseman of the Apocalypse, Jonah Gregory.
And I'm 400 mutants boiled down into soup, Kieran Bennett.
And joining us again for part 2 of our Age of Apocalypse discussion.
And I'm John Proudstar's shirt.
Or lack thereof.
I'm Patrick Edwards.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey, and they just can't get rid of me, listener.
So we covered the Prelude and Volume 1 last time of Age of Apocalypse. And now we're getting into Volumes 2 and 3 for this episode, just in case you're reading along at home. And it gets less confusing, but it takes a while to get there, I'm going to say right up front.
I say this is the real Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, the Prelude. Whew, man, that was kind of a mess. I'm not going to lie.
And the Blink stuff really doesn't, I feel like
it doesn't
have any ramification on the rest of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was Blink like a character they were really trying to push at the time. Like, why else were they featuring Blink so heavily?
You guys know that whole story about Dazzler? Like, she was a total just sort of manufactured to be this there was going to be a whole like thing around, just a whole movement around her.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know enough about it to go into detail. I just know it was one of those things that was super, processed and manufactured.
I mean, honestly, I'm not surprised to hear that that's a thing. I know that DC attempt to do it at least every 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
Like they're doing right now with the fucking Batman Who Laughs. Jesus Christ almighty.
Right, they're really pushing that.
I hate that character. So I will go on record and say that I hate the Batman Who Laughs now.
Well, the good news is Kieran and I will be talking about Dark Phoenix soon, so we will actually get to talk about the intro of Dazzler in an upcoming episode, because that is the debut of both Dazzler and Kitty Pryde in that story arc. So, yeah, I didn't know that until I'd read that one before, but rereading it for the show recently, I'm like, oh, I forgot this is where these characters were introduced, because Kitty Pryde is the character that's actually stuck around and Dazzler exists. So it's like, did you ever play the 6-man version of the X-Men arcade game? And you're like, oh, I got stuck with Dazzler again. Come on.
I love those side scroll brawler where it's like kind of 3. It was like 2.5 dimensions. It wasn't a full 3 dimensions, but it was like you could kind of move up into the back, like up and down kind of. Yeah. As you walk through different alleyways, hitting different, like fighting different sprites that were just the same bad guy with different color schemes.
They were just a million different colored sentinels in that game. And then the bosses that would say like one highly digitized line. It's a great game.
Yeah. But we should get into the meat.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff.
I mean, listen to this, audience. Listen to all my notes.
Yeah.
I got notes. So let's get into it. So what's funny is with this collection, the format that we decided that I basically I have thrust upon you poor souls.
You hoisted upon us.
The way it was with the Prelude Volume 1. So the first book of Volume 2 is where a lot of people, if you look up a lot of reading orders, they place as the first book. It's X-Men Alpha.
Okay.
Yes, I did notice that when I was looking it up online. I was like, there has to be some more comprehensive way of reading this. And I will agree, the first issue of Volume 2 is a better starting point.
Mm-hmm. So that's the one that opens in, I believe, Seattle, which has been the latest American city. Well, don't woo yet. The latest American city to have been the word culled by Apocalypse's goons. Basically, just his unending genocide of humans and non-compliant mutants.
Right.
And there's some unknown mysterious figure climbing over mountains of dead bodies. And he runs into a little girl fleeing from a bunch of the Infinites.
Yeah.
Remember the Infinites are those big green
they're factory-made soldiers. Yeah, because,
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's what you
the stuff that Kieran is made from in his intro.
Yes.
The jean suit.
Yeah, jean suit.
And my first note when we see them and we see this, whoever this captain or whoever their leader is hashtag shoulder pads and hashtag proportions.
I was gonna say, is it a Liefeld drawing? What's going on here?
Oh, I'm actually sending it. Yeah, it's these massive green shoulder pads that have served are just the most impractical things ever, and just the guy's forearms are thicker than his waist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his legs are like 4 legs stuck together. It's like.
No, I actually, several times throughout, like, this whole, both volumes, actually, there were times where I had to go check. I'm like, did Liefeld pencil this or draw, whatever? Because, and not on this one, but, because there's a lot of, like, the super, I mean, it was the style at the time, but the super over buff guys that we mentioned last episode. But on top of that, I noticed a recurring thing where they were avoiding drawing feet at all costs, which is why I thought it was Liefeld.
And hands are always clenched fists.
Yes.
No, I mean, we could do the entire episode just talking about the visuals describe the visuals in these volumes. Yes. There's some just some decisions, some really strong decisions.
When people describe like the comic art when people describe Western comic art of the 90s, like, this is it in its purest form. This is a carton of concentrated orange juice, but instead it's Western comic art. Like, it is, it's a lot.
And that's part of why I, again, forced this upon you poor souls, is not only Age of Apocalypse is such a perfect, it's so 90s. It's so 90s, the whole thing, everything. But so back to it is we come across a girl running away from a bunch of Infinites, and their leader is, I mean, it's Eunice. I don't know how you pronounce. And there's some stranger who saves her, and they realize it's a mutant. They don't know who. They're gonna fight him, but then all of a sudden, the astonishing X-Men show up to fight them.
Yeah,
and our current roster is we got Sabretooth, Wild Child, Rogue, Morph, Blink, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Quicksilver, Storm, and of course they're led by Magneto.
Yeah. Oh, so who is Wild Child? Why is he just like Sabretooth's mini-me? Because I was not familiar with this guy.
Yeah, I
don't know either. And there's this weird thing later, which we'll talk, like, where he's like passed out or comatose, and he like shocks him with that chain around his neck to wake him up, which is weird.
Like he almost has him like in reserve, like some kind of like he's a gun, where he's like, well, now I'm going to get out my smaller me weapon.
He's like a familiar.
Yeah, it's very strange,
and it's never explained. And he has a real name, Kyle. And they call him Kyle, so he's a person. I mean,
yeah. I thought he was like a weird clone of Sabretooth.
That's what I thought as well.
I've never seen this guy.
Yeah,
but no, apparently he's a totally distinct character.
Wild Child's existence within the team and the circumstances surrounding how he came to be in the team, namely that we don't know. I will talk about that later, and it is one of the problems that I have with this.
Okay.
You have problems with this, Kieran?
No.
I thought this was a perfect saga.
All right, we need to keep moving. We're like 3 pages in.
Yeah. So it turns out the mutant, it's Bishop. He's Bishop.
Yes.
He's the time traveling one. He knows that things are not as they should be, and he gets angry at Magneto, tries to like take him out. Magneto's like, "What are you doing?" And then he does some magnet shit to put him to sleep. It's very stupid.
Oh, the magic. Yeah, there's the never-ending use of magnetism.
Oh my god! Yeah, his powers I feel so sorry for him because his powers are never consistent. It's either like, oh, he's Magneto and he's the master of magnetism, or he can barely do anything because he's so tired all the time.
So this particular instance, we could probably Google it and see if there's any validity. He says he basically calms him down and basically makes Bishop very docile by quote, slowing the blood flow of iron to his brain.
Yeah.
You know what? It sounds good.
That sounds like it sounds like you might accidentally give him a massive brain hemorrhage doing this.
But he's the master
I
of
guess it
magnetism.
doesn't kill him.
You know what? It's the most like legitimate sounding, I feel like, thing we're ever gonna get out of this comic book. But yeah, so Bishop, if you remember from the first episode we did, he was sent back in time with Legion when Legion kicked this whole thing off by accidentally killing Xavier. But somehow he got caught in the whatever the fuck, temporal energies, and he kind of sort of remembers, but it's vague, and he's the only one.
He's their MacGuffin because he's the guy that's unstuck from time, which is their excuse for why, he's pulled into this other timeline, but he still remembers the other one, even though nobody else does. And that keeps coming back. So it's like we're finally getting some story beats that are like consistent throughout this, starting in the second volume, which is actually the third volume because there's a prelude. So it took him a bit to get here, but I do have to say this issue is where I started to be much more interested in what was going on. Yes. Because I'm like, okay, there are some connective tissues between all these several different storylines that are happening.
Yeah. And speaking of connective tissue, we then go to the Blob being tortured, experimented on by evil Beast, because remember, Beast is evil. Keeping track with
unrepentingly so at all times as well.
Right. And just remember, don't imagine him with Kelsey Grammer's voice anymore. Imagine him with Tommy Wiseau's voice, because he's the evil version. It makes all of his scenes so much better.
Yeah. That is actually true.
So he's experimenting / torturing the Blob, who breaks free. Havoc shows up, tries to help him. Blob almost smashes both of them. Cyclops saves the day. Of course, Havoc resents it because he hates his big brother for something.
That's pretty much every scene with Havoc.
Can we briefly just take an aside here? We'll power through more issues very shortly, but there is a lot happening in this first one.
Sure.
Can we talk about Havoc and his character for just a second here? There are one-note characters in a lot of other stories, but Havoc is probably one of the worst examples I've ever seen in my life. He constantly hates Scott Summers. And don't get me wrong, Cyclops is a douche. I don't like Cyclops, but he just hates him all the time, and I don't understand why.
It's just, it becomes so laughably absurd. Every interaction is the same. It's something's happening and Havoc's there. He wants to handle it himself, but Cyclops shows up and actually resolves it. And then he's mad.
Yeah.
What my favorite too is what you'll see consistently is him making asides or in thought bubbles saying how everything gets handed to Cyclops. But it's literally no, it's because every time he gets complimented or something happens to him by a superior, it's because he literally did something.
Yeah.
Right.
He did something.
Yeah. So it's
no, he did the thing.
He did the thing,
he did a good job at.
Yeah, Cyclops will do a thing that Havoc either fucked up or couldn't do, and then he's like, "Oh, Scott, you didn't have to do that. I could have handled the situation perfectly well." And Scott's like, "Oh, it's not a problem or anything. It's what we got to do. As the disciples of Apocalypse, it's fine." And he's like, "Oh, fuck you, Scott. You're such an asshole." And it's like, what? What do you I'm always reminded of in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, that one of the big complaints about it is that we were always we were always told that Obi-Wan and Anakin were really good friends, but you never got to see it. And this reminds me of that. Havoc's constantly saying how much he hates Cyclops and how terrible it is to be his brother and how much it sucks. But we only have his word to take for it, and it gets so stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure
there's people that complained about the prequels?
I don't think
you
so.
do have to. You got to dig for it on the dark web. It's in between.
It's the 20th anniversary of Episode 1 as we're recording.
Wow,
this,
really? Is it?
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
So I have to say the other thing that kind of cracks me up is Mr. Sinister has that name, but then when you see him interact with. He is really bad, and they show some of the stuff he's been doing that's evil. But anytime he interacts with Scott, it's a pretty healthy in a weird way relationship.
Yeah.
Like he's actually like being his dad and being like, no, son, this is what we have to do. And blah, blah. Like he's way more calm about all this crazy stuff that's happening.
Oh yeah, he's Ward Cleaver. I'm surprised he doesn't put on a sweater vest.
Yeah.
Than you would expect from a guy named Mr. Sinister.
So he shows up and they do a walk and talk.
Yeah, that's what the part I was thinking of.
And he says some cryptic shit about like, I gotta go somewhere or leave you. I've given you all the tools I can.
Yeah.
Type shit.
I'm your dad. I'm out of here. Gonna go get some cigarettes.
And then we cut to Heaven, the nightclub run by Warren Worthington, aka Archangel.
Yep.
Which is supposedly like a neutral, but it's in Manhattan, which is Apocalypse's capital. So
yeah,
it's not really neutral.
First question: how does Apocalypse let this continue to go on?
Yeah.
I think really one of like Apocalypse's defining character traits is that he is so supremely self-confident and arrogant that he tolerates basically everything because he's so secure in the knowledge that he can just kill anything he doesn't like.
True.
Well, I see it as you gotta have something like this because there's so many points in here, and this spans all epic hero versus villain hellbent on world domination stories. Is what's the point of conquering? I think we might have touched on it last time. What's the point? Like, why? And then the people that support him, Apocalypse, the life looks like it sucks, even if you're a high-ranking mutant, because the whole world, they don't show any part of, wouldn't it? I feel like if I was writing this, I would have shown like little pockets that look like insulated. You know what I mean? Like for like the elite mutant class.
Sure.
Oh my god.
Where they're in like beautiful towers and stuff like that.
I will talk about this.
Everything is shit.
But yeah.
Yeah, everything is shit in this world. There's literally no benefit to being one of Apocalypse's like chosen people. You're still living in a fucking like post-apocalyptic, dang it, post-apocalyptic, current apocalyptic.
Yep.
Yeah.
World. I was gonna say, it is really weird, but I figured the Angels Heaven that whole subplot that is kind of throughout these volumes, is their, Rick with the place in Casablanca thing where it's like the underground, it's neutral, but he's like kind of secretly helping people and, but he's got his own agenda. It's like, that's what I took from that.
I guarantee
situation.
you whoever did this was really thinking like, I took a cinema classic and I put it in comic books.
He's like, Age of Apocalypse. It's the comics version of Casablanca.
Yeah. There's a movie they watch on Mystery Science Theater that is, it's a like PBS movie, but it's starring Raul Julia, and he's obsessed. He's like in a post-apocalyptic world, but it all takes place in like, some really cheap sets. But he's always like scrolling on his computer up. They call it scrolling up cinemas, and he's always watching Casablanca. And they make the comment, never put a good movie inside of your terrible movie. And that's kind of what I was thinking. They're like, never put allusions to a really good story inside of your like mess of a story. But like I said, there's some good moments. Yeah. So, when we move on to, getting to see like the happy home life of Magneto and Rogue, who have been married at this point for a while.
Oh my god, can I please talk about this for a second?
They have a kid.
Can I get really fucking angry about this?
And they have a robo.
I'm so angry.
A robo nanny. I don't know what you're so mad about. What's going on?
It's so stupid. It was.
Listener, my headphones are melting from Kieran's anger.
Okay, so when I started reading this, I was like, okay, this is finally starting to be more coherent. Then in the previous page, like keeping in mind that we've read all the previous stuff, in the previous page, they're like, oh, by the way, there's a human resistance and they have sentinels. Also, Gambit's back. Also, Rogue and Magneto are married and now they have a fucking child that is like 4 years old. I was so apoplectic with rage that they just dared to just fucking put this in the story. Oh my god. Oh yeah,
with all the granular shit they made us slog through in the prelude and the volume 1, and then so much plot happens in 2 pages.
Yeah. It's so fucking stupid. None of the, like, and Magneto, like, has his hair down and he's like, there's nothing more that I love than to hear the sweet laughter of my child. It's like, fuck off. You didn't earn any of this shit. Yeah. You didn't earn any of this at all.
Which, side note, Magneto's hair in general, I realized they made a decision that everyone has longer hair.
Has long hair.
That is the Apocalypse style. Everyone has much longer hair than they do.
The first thing the Apocalypse did was he killed all the humans and then he killed all the barbers.
he killed.
Although Rogue is rocking quite the power mullet throughout this alternate timeline. It's quite a power move to have that hair.
Yeah. So holy fuck. I was so angry when this child showed up because they're just like, this is our happy home life and our child that we love. Also, we have a robot nanny for some reason. And I was just like, man, fuck you. Fuck you for putting this in the second volume. Like,
what? And I don't know if I think it might be in the next episode, but there's a panel with the nanny robot that's like just absurd.
It's in the next volume, but anyway, so
we'll get there.
So we carry on, and there's some villain monologuing, and they're like, we're gonna kill all the humans and stuff, and it turns out that Sinister is plotting, and you know he's gonna go and do his own kind of thing, which is weird because with a name like Sinister, you'd think he'd be quite trustworthy,
right? Yeah, and we also learn of the Kelly Pact with the humans, where they're basically like, "Hey, maybe we should stop this war before everyone dies," and somehow Apocalypse agrees to it, and so there's like a kind of a ceasefire with Europe, though the States are still like fair game for him to just murder everyone, I suppose. Yeah. So that's where humans have been fleeing. So we kind of get a little more of like, okay, what's the world kind of looking like?
And we learned that the current 4 horsemen of Apocalypse are Sinister, Holocaust, Abyss, and Mikhail Rasputin, who is absent, and they don't know where he is. And then we cut to, what is this scene with? Oh, it's Weapon X and Jean Grey meeting the Human High Council in Europe.
Continue. Yeah, they have a conversation about some stuff. It doesn't matter. Like it just.
Yeah, it does.
None of this fucking matters.
It's just an excuse to throw in. There's so many scenes that are excuses to throw in names that you've heard before if you are a fan of comics. Like, yeah, and they reference in one page they reference Moira McTaggart, Braddock, who would be otherwise Captain Britain, Emma Frost, and just to throw them in there, like they're here too.
Yeah. And we're going to get more of that kind of stuff as the story unfolds. But the important thing here is Bishop, I don't remember what triggers it.
Rogue touches him to try and like figure out if his tales of an alternate reality are true. But the temporal energies or whatever the fuck, overwhelm, everyone and they're all like freaking out. And then, Gambit's back and he saves Rogue because that's what he exists to do. And then everyone gets really mad and they yell a lot and Magneto's like, fucking eat my ass. And Gambit's like, but why are you doing this to me? Why am I here? And they get really mad and everyone poses a lot. And then it turns out they're married and they have a kid. And Gambit's like, wow, that's really fucked up. And I was like, thank you. Thank you for admitting this. It is really good.
Well, Gambit's not part of the X-Men anymore.
No, he left.
Because of Rogue and Magneto.
Yes.
Right.
Together. Because it is a team drama.
The important thing I think that happens in the scene though with the temporal stuff where they see the alternate timelines is it shows Magneto like, hey, if Xavier hadn't died, things would have been better for everybody else. I mean, not you so much, but everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So it kind of plants the seeds for later plot stuff. Like I actually, unlike in the last episode, especially in the prelude, I at least see what they were doing with these scenes. Yeah. Whereas before it was kind of incomprehensible.
And then I believe nothing.
The villains pose, and then they bring back the Macran crystal, crystallizing the universe again.
Yeah. I always pronounce it Mcron. That's how they said it in the cartoon.
Oh, okay. Okay. The Mcron then.
And then, they reference that the universe is like crystallizing or something. Right. Kind of like what happened instantaneously to start the whole thing at back in the prelude.
Right. Yeah.
But,
there's not enough elements to the story.
No. that's the end of X-Men Alpha. And then we have Generation Next. Very clever. Play on words. Sponsored by Pepsi.
There's also, in the collected volume I have, there's this one issue that's just The Age of Apocalypse, The Chosen. And it is literally just like, remember the trading cards that had stats on everybody? It's basically that for 20 pages. And then it has like the merest pretense of actually having a story where it's like, I need to go look up information about these mutants by some random dude. Yeah. Full disclosure, I read the comic pages part and skipped everything else because I'm like, I don't need to read about who Gambit is.
So we enter on a training montage with these new young mutants that are training to become full-fledged X-Men. You've got Chamber, Husk, Mondo, Skin, Vincente. I don't know if any of these are pretty deep cuts.
Oh yeah, these are all
know
deep
it all.
cuts. I'll summarize this one if you want. They're having a training montage. They say a lot of edgy stuff. Magneto shows up and he's like, "Hey, Colossus, Kitty Pryde,
who are the leaders?
Yeah, who are the leaders? Yeah. Don't write them so rough."
Also, they fucking.
Oh yeah, that was obvious. Everyone's either fucking or yelling. And he's like, "Hey, don't be so rough on them. I have a mission for you guys. This Bishop fella, he's claiming that there's some kind of future thing. And so they're assigned the mission to save Colossus' sister, who what is she? She has like some kind of power that they need.
Ilyana, she can time travel. So
That's right.
It's setting up. Yeah, they're really quickly all of a sudden. It seems like they almost realized they were fucking around too much.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, we need plot. Cause basically it's setting up there are going to be 3 missions that get set up and we haven't gotten to the third one yet, but, or that's the first of them is to fix reality. One of the 3 things they got to do is get someone who can do time travel. That's apparently Ilyana Rasputin. She's a captive. So that's this team's mission.
Yeah.
That we'll be following. So Colossus in the normal timelines can shift back to like regular skin and his metal, but he is metal throughout this entire series.
Yes.
So can he not shift? And like, he's married to Kitty Pryde in this, and he got metal dick.
100%.
I mean, he has to.
It's
right?
probably still smooth though, right?
That secret died with Stanley. I'm sorry, I don't have any more information.
I mean,
so that's the first of the 3 big missions.
We'll never know now because he's sadly no longer with us, and I don't think anyone throughout history ever had the courage and bravery to ask him like, "What's Colossus?"
I mean, in Mallrats they asked him about the Thing, but they didn't think to ask him about Colossus. So.
Yeah,
fools.
All right. So yeah, that one is, like you said, all set up for another mission. And then we get to Astonishing X-Men.
Yep.
It really likes to jump around.
And they're all assembled. They're all hanging out. They're all kind of just being really angsty and drama about everything. And then all of a sudden a portal opens up and Blink and Sunfire fall through it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing some kind of recon mission. But basically what they figured out was that Apocalypse is not adhering to the Kelly Pact, which was he was going to stop his genocides of humans.
Wow.
I know. Can you believe the guy who massacred half a planet and is literally committing an entire racial genocide is untrustworthy?
This is also when, and they may have mentioned it in the other volumes, I don't remember, but the people that aren't quite horsemen but are still like the goons are called prelates.
Yeah, prelates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's throughout.
That's what Havoc and
so one of those. And then one of them is following them through her portal, which is a thing I don't think they had mentioned before, that it's like when she blinks into like to teleport, it actually opens a portal.
Blink's powers are also inconsistent. And then she's got those like dagger things she throws, but no one where did those come from?
Yeah, it's just funny because it seems like before it was more like Nightcrawlers, and now it's like an actual portal, which is fine. Like, I don't care how they're going to do it. It's just now it's like, oh, well, if it's a portal, we can have this like recurring thing where people follow them through. And this is the first time I remember them doing that. But it's one of those scenes that like it worked for me. Like the big dude is chasing them through and she basically closes the portal on him and cuts him in half. And I'm like, okay, that's fair.
Oh, and I mean, I could go forever on like using portals or being able to teleport and teleport other things with you is, I think, one of the more undervalued powers in superhero history. Because you can literally, now a Nightcrawler does some stuff like that, but I don't care what your power is. You know, if I can teleport you to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, or I can teleport you into low orbit, I win. You can be invulnerable, but if you gotta breathe, motherfucker, I win.
Yeah, exactly. So we get back to Apocalypse and we get to see him in a floaty chair, which is kind of cool because he's, being evil and all.
And the most like ridiculous, he comments about he's got hundreds of thousands of like corpses and shit below him. Right. And he says, I find the aroma ... soothing.
Yeah. He's just like as stupidly evil as they could come up with for a character.
It's ridiculous. Like, it's just fucking so stupid.
The next is his little lackey is like, he gives him good news and he's like, what's wrong with your face, Lord? And he goes, nothing. It's a smile.
I'm so angry. And exists.
Their writer was so pleased with themselves.
Because he's making fun of the design that his coworker came up with.
Yeah, exactly.
We cut back to X-Men.
Yeah, there's some drama with Remy trying to be all like, hey, Rogue, we should totally make out. And then Blink brings her child up and kind of ruins the mood.
It's so
much shade. Well, and then the scene ends with, so he's going to get a mission. We don't know what it is yet, I believe, but Gambit was called because Magneto has one of those big special 3 missions for him and his new crew. But then it ends with him, looks like he's just jumping off a cliff. And there's no resolution to it.
Yeah. Well, gotta go.
It's like, so the first time I read it, I was like, so did he just kill himself or something?
Yeah. He killed himself in the
one previous panel. Blink says, not while you're still alive. And then he's like, bye, and jumps off
he says, because I don't think it's going to be that way for much longer. And then he's jumping off. Yeah. Very confusing. And then
Nightcrawler. Then Nightcrawler gets his mission, which is to go and find someone who's at like a refuge place.
It's Avalon. It's like a beautiful, perfect valley in the middle of Antarctica. Is that where the Savage Lands would have been in the normal timeline?
I get that impression.
Probably. Sauron's from.
Yeah.
He needs to get Destiny, who's like got like psychic powers or something.
Right. She can see the future and sort of like predict timelines and things like that. So
but
so we got 2 of the 3.
Who she looks like is Mystique, which is Nightcrawler's mom.
Yeah,
which I assume that's still canon nowadays, but things change.
Yeah.
So, so all the missions are set in motion.
Yeah.
Which is, they're finally kind of pushing things forward. So,
and then at the very end of the issue, Rogue and a handful of the other X-Men leave to stop Holocaust, who's one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, from basically just like genociding more people.
Have we mentioned this is a World War II allegory?
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Because they're very subtle. It's very subtle.
Yeah. I didn't catch it. Yeah. What with the the Casablanca thing and
just the endless references to Casablanca.
Yeah.
What's funny though is, and I didn't really notice it till right this minute, is we've got 3, and we'll talk about what the final one is, and we'll get to it. But so we've kind of are setting the stage of, Magneto believes that there's an alternate reality, the right reality that they need to try and get to. And then he basically creates 3 objectives that can make that happen if those 3 things come together. And teams get sent to do it. None of them are the X-Men. And the X-Men, who are like the main protagonists of this whole saga, basically spend the rest of all these volumes to the end kind of fucking around. I mean, they get into little like mini adventures.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. Now that you pointed out.
they don't do any of like the super overarching, like
the really important stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of that because they jump around so much and there's so many like groups that kind of intertwine every so often that I didn't even put that together, but you are totally right. So yeah, let's, I guess we'll move into, it's the next Excalibur one. And
it's the first one, yeah.
Oh, it's the first one that's Excalibur, you're right.
And that opens with, Switchback, who, is she canon of normal?
I don't even know who she is. I had never heard of her. So.
I had never either. So she is she's getting taken up by the boatmen or the ferrymen.
Right.
Through like a little tunnel to Avalon, which is where Nightcrawler was sent.
Honestly, this scene is one of my first parts I thought was pretty cool because they introduced Juggernaut and he's become a monk because he's like, I've set aside my evil ways. I'm like, dang, that's actually kind of a cool twist. I didn't see that coming because he's one of the characters I was wondering. He's like a perfect fit to be like one of the horsemen because he's so powerful.
And the art for him is also ridiculous, but it works. In this case, it works for me.
Because it's Juggernaut.
Yeah, it's just, it's not, because I feel like part of it is his like torso. His arms are ridiculous. And again, like we talked about in the last episode, those aren't real muscles. A lot of those, like those don't exist. Those bulges. But it works in the sense of like there's some proportionality to it where like he's got a thick torso. What's crazy is so many
tiny head.
Yeah, his head is very tiny. But yeah, I dig his artwork, and he's just this big behemoth, and he talks about, he takes her to Avalon, and he talks about how he used to be killer, and
yeah, and I actually really I thought it was a really good touch that the artists actually drew him to look a lot like Xavier because they're related, aren't they? Like cousins, or
they're half brothers.
That's what it is. Okay, it's been a bit since I've read other than this X-Men. So yeah, I thought that was really cool because like, you can see that they're related, even though they're very different physically. But I just thought that was a nice touch. And his design I actually like, despite the ridiculousness, because I mean, he looks like he's just straight out of a fighting game. Like he could be a Street Fighter character or something.
Oh, absolutely.
Which I actually kind of dug because he's got like the wraps around him and he's got like the ratty, like,
if he's not fighting anymore.
Right.
Why has he got boxing strap like wraps around his wrists and knuckles?
I don't know. Just to look cool. It's like everything else in this. It's just to look cool.
Oh, I mean, again, this entire thing could just be about the look of some of these characters. Yeah. So he takes her to Avalon. It cuts back to
America.
Heaven. Oh. Well, yeah, in America. Heaven, the Angels Club.
Right.
And Angel he just cannot catch a break getting like accosted by.
He's constantly getting just like bullied and like beaten up by people who just want things. And he's like, could you leave me alone? And they're like, no, we're just going to keep beating you up because you're a guy with wings.
And then, Nightcrawler shows up to basically extort information out of him. Again, Nightcrawler with much longer hair than he normally has because that literally, that's all they do.
He's more ruthless because he actually consistently seems to kill people with his swords rather than just like,
Nightcrawler
swashbucklingness of like, I've disarmed you, foe. But because
Nightcrawler's a bloody boy.
Since it's the darker reality, he has no qualms about being a stabby boy.
I also love everyone has eye tattoos, face tattoos.
Yes, that is true.
Everybody
has it.
like tribally, like angular, like symbol, like shapes tattooed on their faces. So he smacks Angel around. He's looking for information on it's called the Infernal Gallop. It is the sort of pipeline that gets you to Avalon. And he gets whatever information he needs. We cut back to Magneto, who's talking to Mystique, Nightcrawler's mama. And he like gives her a heads up that he's coming to Avalon.
Yeah. And she's like, nah, and just yells about it. And then they have an argument and it's exhausting.
And then we get to what's probably one of the more uncomfortable scenes as far as from a racial sensitivity standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Nightcrawler, the ghost dance.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not great, to just kind of have that in there and be a thing. And then have like a character who he is Native American. That is correct. John Proudstar. I don't actually.
Yes, yeah, he is. And so let's talk about the real shirt in the room.
Is it a shirt though? Is it a shirt or is it just?
It's listener
skin.
So you got to go get it to see it. I don't know if you guys.
I'm looking at it
tweet
right
about
now.
It or something. So I want you to imagine a muscular man because it's a comic book and everyone's yoked, even though there's probably like no food. But
he
and
is
then
muscular
imagine
as hell. Like he's not just muscular. He's large and muscular.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So and then imagine there's a couple steps to this. Imagine a painted on dark blue shirt. Like, as you do with superheroes, where it's not even spandex could be that
right.
But okay. But then imagine the middle third of it is gone. Just gone. All the way down.
Yeah,
to your
from
belly
his
button.
neck all the way down to the belt line. Just nothing.
And it's tucked in.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a coat at first until I'm like, wait a minute, that is not a coat that he's wearing.
Which I don't know how it would be that tight and stay there because there's nothing holding it together in the front.
Yeah, there's not even like, there aren't any zippers or buttons or like frayed edges. It's just a clean cut in the middle, just showing off his abs.
Now, we were all joking about it in the chat thread, before the show, and maybe it's not a shirt at all. Maybe it's just a solid color tattoo.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that. Maybe it's part of his mutantness is that he's got weird discolored patches.
This shirt is his power.
Yeah. I mean, does it ever show what his actual power is? I remember him showing up. He gets his finger broken immediately by...
not broken. Teleported off.
Oh, teleported off. Yeah, you're right.
Because he insults Mystique, his mom, claiming she like robs people before she takes them to Avalon.
Yeah.
Or like extorts them because they have no other choice. So she takes everything from them.
At the risk of
doesn't like his mama being dissed.
At the risk of further derailing it, John Proudstar also has a square-shaped dick. Just do with that information what you will.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Also part of his mutant powers, I assume.
Is a box dick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to take the good mutations with the bad, right?
What bad mutations? Both of those are fantastic.
You got me.
So this is the next step on the trip to Avalon. So after some, thumping their chests, teleporting fingers off as you do, Nightcrawler secures himself passage. But there's a spy eavesdropping.
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah.
That's what happens when you show up at a neutral location, is the bad guys are just hanging out there drinking too.
I'm going to the secret Avalon place that no one knows about. How do I get there? Let me tell you loudly.
I mean, everyone knows if you're a character in a comic book, you have to loudly and just very plainly state everything you're doing as you're doing it, or you'll just die the internal monologues aren't allowed.
Oh,
they just don't have that capability.
No, even in the last issue when Magneto's just standing there by himself in an abandoned building, and he's just, the entire page is just talk bubbles of him talking to himself, not thinking them, just talking out loud. Yep. And talking about how he misses Charles and how if he were still alive, this world wouldn't be the way it is. And
which again, remember, according to the prelude, they were friends for a month.
Right.
Oh, yeah. If I was friends with Magneto, I'd be like, hey man, could you maybe dial it back a notch? Because this is a bit much for me.
I consider both of you, I consider us friends, but we're not, we've interacted through geekly cons and things like that.
If one of us died, you wouldn't be wishing for us to come back to life and change the world? It would literally be one of us dying yes, it would be like, I'm devoting my life to Kieran because... Yeah,
I mean
to Kieran's legacy.
That's my plan. If anything happens to Kieran,
the way I imagine it is after
every episode will be about Green Lantern. If anything, happens to Kieran, in his honor.
The way I imagine it is after they have the bar fight in the prelude, Magneto went away and then he came back and he was like, "Hey Charles, hey Charles, look at my back. Look at my naked back, and on it is just Professor X's face in a tattoo form." And he's like, I got this for you, Charles. I got this for you and me. Because I love you. Oh. Because I love you so much. We're best friends, Charles. We met 3 weeks ago. We're best friends.
Mm-hmm.
This is normal human behavior.
Forever.
It's amazing.
Back in Apocalypse Town, we actually get to see, like, I kind of forgot that Deadpool was even a thing at this point, but we actually see, like, what's going on, with that he is, like, one of the assassins working for, Apocalypse.
Yeah, but he's not Deadpool, he's Dead Man Wade.
Dead Man Wade, which is a much, much worse name in every way.
And so the spy is Danny Moonstar, and she comes and tells him, and then he sends her, Dead Man Wade, and Damask. She has a different Damascus. I forgot what it was. She has a different name. It's the same character, but she has a different name in regular Marvel canon. They're the Pale Riders. They're gonna follow Nightcrawler and kill everyone in Avalon, or something like that.
That's
Dead Man Wade's look, guys. I feel like this is the only character that the redesign was they did less with this than
I mean, they just made him, like, not covering up himself, so he's just wearing a boring red, like, shirt that's all ripped up. Yeah, potato sack, essentially, yeah. And then you get to see that he's all gnarly looking.
Yeah.
And he has goobery eyes, which I was not a fan of.
No, yeah. Gunky eyes, no.
And then that one ends with Nightcrawler heading out in a submarine that has Excalibur written on it, which I thought was a bit much. And Switchback making it to what's her name?
Destiny.
Yeah.
In Avalon, yeah.
And they touch fingers, which is, I guess, how her power works. Like, once she touches the person, that's when she sees all the timelines and stuff. And she is, like, screaming and says that she sees the apocalypse. And we're about at the halfway point of this book because it's pretty beefy. So let's take a minute to reflect on what do we think so far of what has happened in this magnum opus.
It's perfect writing. It's just excellent fortune.
Counterpoint.
This is one of the most dog shit things I've ever read in my life. I can't believe how much like when I was reading this, I think I was messaging Jonah just being like, what the fuck is happening in this thing? I hate this so much. It's just all over the place and so sloppy. Oh my god.
You know, you need things like this once in a while to really make you appreciate the fine art comic books.
Oh,
like their true storytelling art that you guys usually review.
100%. Like
we've definitely hit some stuff we were not fans of in our other episodes. And I'm gonna agree with what you're saying there. Like, I didn't hate it completely because I'm such a fan of these characters, because they're like, I'm in the same boat as Pat, where, like, I grew up as a teen in the 90s, you know, like a young teen reading my friends' X-Men comics, because they were probably slightly too violent for me to get away with having my own copies at home, because I get away with Spider-Man because, his stuff was relatively safe. Although sometimes looking back at those 90s ones, I'm like, these are a little much for a Spider-Man comic. But it's just like, man, I get what they're going for in a lot of these, but it just seems really poorly organized. Like, you have all these different creators with all these different ideas, probably, like, being told, no, you have to do this. So they're trying to kind of mush everything together with all these different books that are happening.
Yeah.
And when you collect them in this way, it's like, well, I'm sure it's the best way to read, as far as knowing all of the bits, but you're jumping around so much that it's just hard to follow. Like, if you're listening and you have no idea what we're saying about the actual, like, plot, that's totally, I think I said this exact same thing last episode. You are 100% right there with us, because even reading it's kind of that way throughout the entire thing.
And like I read it twice in preparation for this. Right. And I still have these massive pages of notes to try and keep my head straight.
Yeah, exactly. So, do we want to jump back in then?
Yeah, let's power through.
Yeah. Okay,
so we go to Gambit and the Externals.
Right.
So we get to meet his new crew he's assembled since quitting the X-Men. We got Jubilee, Strong Guy, Sunspot, and kind of as a sort of honorary, Leela Cheney, their former rock star, who, as we believe at first, has no powers, but we will soon find out. And they're set themselves up as thieves, which, okay, Gambit is always is like, I'm a thief. nothing is thiefy about his powers. He blows shit up.
Yeah.
He can make
like
things blow up.
The least stealthy power.
Yeah.
And despite that, he's a world-renowned thief. So this is where we get like what their mission actually is to go steal this crazy crystal thing.
Yep.
Like that's what they're on the path to do.
Yeah, Magneto, they're in their sewer hideout, and Magneto's waiting there, and he basically, the third piece of the fixed reality puzzle is we need to steal the M'Kraan crystal.
Right.
And
why?
They're like, what?
Why do they need to do this?
Because it's the nexus of all reality, Kieran. Come on.
Yeah, that's how they're gonna get back to the real
magic,
reality.
crystally. It's comics magic.
It's one of like 7 MacGuffins. So
yeah, imagine like if the Infinity Stones were just one thing. I feel like that's the M'Kraan crystal. It's all reality in a jewel. So they go underground. They find I think they literally call it Apocalypse's science chamber.
Yeah. Yeah, it is Apocalypse's science chamber. It's like, this is just the collection of all the good shit in one place, and we just just got in there.
How convenient.
Easy peasy.
Nope, they're ambushed by the Madri, which are like religious zealots who worship Apocalypse as a god.
There's weird cultists that I don't think we had seen before, but they come up a few times throughout this.
Wow, how surprising. Something that we'd never seen before just showing up in the story. That's so surprising. I can't imagine that would happen.
Very out of character for this book.
Yep. Then we learn that apparently Leela Cheney, so Magneto just senses in her somehow. I guess that's some kind of magnet power. I guess
magnet powers.
You can sense other people's powers.
Obviously.
That she can teleport or like transport them across the universe to the galaxy where the crystal is. And then we get like she unlocks her power with some, alien magic sciencey helmet thing. And then we get I wrote down like there's literally no point for that shot of it like ripping her clothes off.
Oh yeah,
not at all.
The power.
It's so dumb.
It's as gratuitous as when we saw the splintered realities, and for no reason, one of them was Rogue in like her Savage Land uniform, which is just like the skimpiest, like ripped up clothes of her normal uniform that barely cover anything, but clinging to Magneto. Like,
who's dressed normally?
Who's dressed totally normally.
Yeah.
Yep. It's not good, is what I'm trying to say. It's very, very bad.
As she's opening up the portal, more Apocalypse lackeys led by Richter show up. We're talking about proportions. That dude's lats.
Okay. Yeah, there's lats upon lats upon lats.
His torso is his lats have lats. They call him Mudir, which I was curious, so I looked it up. It's Arabic for director. And that's not the first time that they use an Arabic word for a title.
Is that because of Apocalypse supposed to be like this ancient dude?
Yeah, I think he's from Egypt or thereabouts from like 6,000 years ago.
Something like that, yeah.
So there's like kind of fight. The externals go through the portal, but our little bad guy Richter accidentally gets sucked in after them and then this shot of Magneto, his nose.
So stupid. It's so fucking stupid.
And also he is 3 times as big and wide as buff as he is in any other shot.
Yeah.
Or like image. But I've never stood like that with my like one hand kind of in front of me, bent 90 degrees with the palm turned back towards me.
It's very awkward.
But we have our three of 3 objectives. We need a time traveler, someone Magic Stone, and I feel like Destiny's never really explained exactly how she'll help.
I think it's supposed to be that they need her to somehow guide them to the correct reality.
Yeah.
Since she can see,
like she'll know
ones.
what's the right version.
Because they kind of the justification they gave for it was that Rogue kind of like saw all of like Bishop's kind of like memories and stuff like that, but they didn't really have any kind of temporal way of like confirming this or really kind of like pinning down the correct timeline. So they were like, well, we need someone who knows like about seeing the future and seeing the past. And there's only one person who can do that because Apocalypse killed so many people.
Right.
And then we're on to Weapon X, issue 1.
Yep,
Which, how do we feel about, I don't know if we talked about it. How do we feel about this version of old Logan? His look. One hand, the metal stump.
One hand.
The all black and red.
Yeah, it's a weird design, but everything is a weird design in this.
And again, he's got angular shape, weird shaped face tattoos.
Yeah,
just like some orange, some red triangles on his forehead.
Yeah, it's weird. The one hand thing I thought was kind of interesting in that, like, in any modern thing, he would just grow his hand back. But he has like this metal. Well, anyone who loses a limb in this, they have like a weird metal thing instead. Well, and
so that's one of the most.
There's been characters who have lost like their entire arm and just have a metal arm. Like, why didn't they just give him a metal hand then?
Well, because they have one big payoff, which I think it's in volume 4. Well, which won't be this episode, but
cool. Then we don't have to wait long for that.
What's funny is the story for the stump is. They never show it. They just allude to it. Mm-hmm. It's he lost that hand fighting with Cyclops, and that's why Cyclops only has one eye.
Right.
Because he took out his eye and Cyclops blasted off. So I think it was something with Cyclops' blast.
Sure.
Like, cauterized it or something so it wouldn't grow back. I don't know.
Yeah. But they actually have massively upped the healing factors of anyone who has one since this era. Like, they had healing factors. They'd get better quickly just so that they could be like, in the next scene, he's fine again. But he's even in this book a couple times where he's like, I have to make sure I judge this jump right because otherwise the flames will catch up to my healing factor and it'll kill me so it's like there is more risk in some of the stuff they do because I feel like newer stuff, there's the evil Deadpool who's like limbs and stuff of regular Deadpool that like grew back together into another person. That's how like ridiculous the healing factors are nowadays.
So we open on Weapon X and Jean Grey infiltrating the seawall, like the coastal defenses for Apocalypse on America with the Sentinel. They get into a little. Some of these artworks of Weapon X Logan like tearing through things are hilarious. They mix it up with Havoc.
Yeah, they mix it up with Havoc. They
trying
fly
to knock
around
out,
and yeah. It's kind of comic-y action. A lot of good Wolverine snicked stuff,
right.
Just like cutting through everything. I think they're knocking out like some radar defenses.
Yeah, they're knocking out
Sentinels.
They're knocking out the East Coast defense system so that the Europeans can get a whole bunch of people away from America and into Europe, which is like less shit than the US.
Yes. Right. And they get rid of Havoc by having the Sentinel shoot its hands off and grab him and then shoot him into a teleporter. And we learn later that he has been molecularly fused to the hand, which doesn't come back at all because he's like totally normal.
It never comes back. It's fucking dumb. God. Yeah, so they
back to Human High Council.
Yeah, they meet with the Human High Council. Some chick named Magma shows up and she's gonna like kill them all, but Wolverine just stabs her and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be fine." And then one of the members,
no point to that.
Yeah, there's no point. And then one of the members of the Human Council was like, "This proves my point. We have to bomb the US and destroy everything." And Wolverine and Jean Grey are like, "This is going to be really bad." And that's the end of that.
And then we're back to the amazing, not the astonishing, the amazing X-Men. It's really important to make that distinction, guys.
Yeah.
Let's see. It talks about the evacuation, and we find out that it's not going to go well because there are bad guys spying on.
Of course, there are
on the humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's like more of our favorite zealots, the Madry. And we cut to a little bit of a training where they're practicing for this evacuation, the X-Men.
Right. So their big plan,
like they have to,
their big
it's
plan
some
is
bullshit.
Like to put this thing that's going to reprogram the Sentinels to not attack mutants so that they can help with the evacuations.
Or not like them specifically, but it's like if Can't the High Council just do that? Because they did it for Weapon X. They did it for Weapon X and Jean Grey. There's no reason.
So stupid.
Yeah. And then we get Dazzler here, just kind of hanging out, smoking cigs. I don't know where she's getting these cigarettes in this
shooting
world.
rainbows.
Yeah. Everything is destroyed, but apparently they still got convenience stores where she can buy cigarettes.
Yeah, 7-Eleven doesn't shut.
Yeah. And then we've got, we find out this is the first time we see him. Exodus is an X-Men. And he's like a big villain in the normal X-Men like canon timeline.
Wasn't really familiar with Exodus.
But literally just comes out of nowhere. Also, Banshee is here out of retirement, apparently. Apparently he had retired because they referenced that. Mm-hmm. Which
do we ever see it? Sure. No, of course not. Why would we? Why would we ever see anything like that? That'd be dumb.
You know, how do we feel about this iteration of Iceman, where he's just basically like this giant thing, like almost like ice snake,
he's like a snake
with no mouth,
just sort of like does whatever the hell he wants, and he's like this is weird shot where he is kind of like twisting around over the top of everyone, and he's got like bits of ice like branching out into the buildings around him. It's honestly kind of creepy.
Yeah, he looks like a Bloodborne boss or something.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But yeah, he's a weird version of the character. Like, he always looks super weird. Like, remember way back in the Prelude when he was moping about not being able to use his powers to their fullest?
Yeah.
Basically being emasculated because, what's her name? Emma Frost.
Remember when he
used them better than
when he went to dinner and his dad was a racist and it was real weird.
Oh God, yeah.
Now we have
so
this.
in this version, he's like a weird ice monster, except for when he's not. And there's a lot of drawings of him with this weirdly giant chin. Actually, that's a consistent art thing, or like a choice that was definitely made, was something to do with long pointy chins. And it really depends on like which artist happened to be drawing that issue. But there are some pretty amazing chins throughout this book.
It's like a icicle porcupine, his back always.
Right. So in this version, he's super charged up, and he even gets shattered and like puts himself back together at some point throughout this whole mess.
And then then they need to go help the evacuation. This group of the X-Men, Banshee, Exodus, Quicksilver, Dazzler, Storm, and Iceman. And Magneto says to Exodus, you can teleport them there. I know you can. Which, does that sound familiar, listener? Because he literally 2 issues ago had another person that I just know you can teleport.
The entire story is just Magneto forcing people to teleport over and over again. He himself does nothing.
And, and he does, because again, that proves it, right? Like, 2 times proves your hypothesis. Magnetism powers lets you sense teleportation powers.
Yes, of course. That makes sense.
So they teleport to the evacuation site, and they're kind of undercover, and Quicksilver has like a little cute interaction with a kid, and then the Sentinels show up, and then, oh no, that cute kid gets a bunch of weird black tendril things, yank him into the woods. What's happening? And then the Sentinels come.
And the Sentinels turn on them because it turns out that Apocalypse's men were there from the beginning and they're going to have a big fight. And then the next issue.
And they reprogrammed the disc to make the X-Men. Make the X-Men the enemy. And this is where, Iceman gets shattered by a Sentinel.
Oh, yeah, he gets shattered.
Mm-hmm. The Anointed Brotherhood of the Chaos is who they're going to fight. I don't really recognize any of these characters.
Yeah, me neither.
They just look very generic bad guys. And it looks like, shit's about to go to hell for the X-Men. And that's that issue ends. Then we're at Factor X. That's the Cyclops saga.
It's the Cyclops saga. Yeah. The story that everyone's really just dying to know about.
Yeah. So there's a ton of shots. So it's basically there's people trying to escape from the pens, their prisons. And it's Cyclops, Havoc, Aurora, and Northstar chasing them down. But they always show a lot of times Cyclops and Havoc on these like future motorcycle things. But all of the like design of the backdrop of where they live, it just looks like just utter rubble everywhere. Oh, yeah. Like those don't look like practical transportation vehicles.
Oh yeah, they would be horrible. They'd be horrible to try and drive.
Yeah. So they round up a bunch of the baddies, or not baddies, they are the baddies. They round up the escapees. And
yeah, we start learning more about
the same
these.
shit we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, we learn more about these pens that are like where humans and are being experimented on, and like lesser mutants that Apocalypse doesn't really deem worthy are sent, and like their DNA is kind of like mixed together and boiled down and all this crazy stuff.
Beast, I don't know if anyone's picked up on this, but Beast is evil.
Yes. Yes. Turns out. Yeah.
I feel like nothing really happens here. It's just, they're just kind of reintroducing. Characters we've met before.
They posture a lot, and they, Havoc is mean to Scott, and Scott's like blah, 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 blah,
same,
and says a lot of stuff.
Same stuff happens.
But at the very, very end, like literally in the last like 4 pages, Sinister disappears, and they break into his apartment, and he's destroyed everything in there. And then Sinister blows up the head of the giant Apocalypse statue that has replaced the Statue of Liberty. And that is the end of the issue. But yeah, basically like nothing happens.
We do find out Havoc is having an affair with the singer at Heaven, who's a human. So he's all like, oh, anti-human, I'm so awesome, and Scott sucks. And it turns out he's the one that's dating a human after all. So there's like, I guess, some intrigue they're trying to set up, which I don't think goes anywhere for a while.
What?
But yeah,
weird.
I know, crazy, right? So yeah, that issue is just more anything with the Scott storyline is mostly just drama with him and Havoc.
Oh my God.
It's literally the same thing for like 4 or 5 issues.
Right. But now we get to X-Man.
Yeah, with a bit. So we talked X-Man, with Nate Gray, he's with the I feel like again, this is another one that until the very end of the arc, nothing really happens. I feel like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's their Forge is like the mentor, the tough mentor and he's just being like, you're holding me back, and all that shit. And does anything really happen?
Forge has his own team. He's like made of weird metal talon claw things, and half of his face is missing just to show that it's a different dimension.
Yep.
But he's got like Toad and Sauron,
Brute,
Mastermind, and Forge is their leader.
By the way, they can't figure out how to spell Sauron. I noticed it's spelled 2 different ways across multiple issues.
Nice.
Sometimes it's SOA, sometimes it's SAU.
Yeah. So they're in a traveling circus, which is how they've been sneaking around. And
I love the idea that in this post-apocalyptic landscape, they are still performing Midsummer Night's Dream.
Right.
It is the play that it will never die.
Yeah.
People need distraction.
It makes sense. Like there's a lot of the humans are like scattered in these little camps. So they're using that as their cover to travel around the country.
You need a little distraction from being genocided.
Oh yeah. All the time. Nothing distracts from genocide quite like Shakespeare. It's what I'm saying always.
Yep. And then it ends with Apocalypse knows there's some powerful, cause the Shadow King is like, diamond him into there's some powerful telepath out there in Apocalypse. They say really early on that he had like tried to kill all the telepaths.
Right.
Yeah.
And he sends Domino his best but he has like 50 best assassins. Every time it's like my best assassin. He has a lot of
assassins, but he just want to play favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're always like the best who never fails me. So she's gonna hunt him down. Yeah. The troop has a run-in with some infinites, and then they meet a mysterious man named Essex, which if you know anything about anything, you know who he is. He's got a big fucking red diamond in his forehead.
No, he's some total mystery.
Yeah, I don't get who's he supposed to be. That's weird. He has red eyes and a red diamond, and he appeared right after.
And his name is Essex, which is
weird. So odd.
I wonder if that'll come back into play later.
No, probably not.
Doubt it. But the thing with I think the important thing, I guess, in that story arc is showing how Nate is like this really powerful psychic. So they're trying to hide him, because they're like, Forge is convinced like, yeah, he's the only one strong enough to take down Apocalypse, but he's not quite ready for it. But of course, Nate is being an angsty teen and being like, but Dad, I want to use my psychic powers.
I mean, basically,
which kind of leads to him, consistently doing things that endanger his group. So he's just kind of being a jerk by like using his powers in those ways. Like,
I hate him. He's just a whiny. It's also very 90s. Like you referenced the prequels. He's so like
Anakin.
Young Anakin. Yeah, he's so young Anakin.
100%.
I'm surprised he doesn't complain about sand at some point.
Right. And that's that issue. So then we're moving along to the Amazing X-Men.
So this is the group of X-Men that were helping with the evacuation that was going to shit. And we cut in and we see that little boy who was taken in and he's been captured by Abyss, who, again, his powers, he can become ribbons. He
terrifying.
Can, like, disassemble his body. I mean, it's terrifying.
He can wrap so many presents. But instead, he chose to use his powers for evil and wrap up little boys.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just being terrorized. I think it's one of those things where it's like I feed off your fear, which is like,
yeah,
okay.
Whatever.
Just, yeah. No, that's so original.
Yeah, so the X-Men and the Agents of Apocalypse, they have like a big old brouhaha. But then Banshee finds the boy who's been kidnapped by Abyss and, he tries to kind of like have a fight with him, but he's like, ah, shit, there's actually a kid in there. What the fuck? And so he goes back and he tells Quicksilver.
Well, he says doesn't Abyss tell him I want like the son of Magneto?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Challenge me or I'll kill the kid. So, he goes back and tells him, and Quicksilver and of course Storm, because they in love.
For some reason.
Goes with him. So, yeah, it's literally like they did with some of these like couplings they did. It's just like they did a dartboard basically.
And,
and there's a nice little fighty fight with Quicksilver and Abyss. And so Abyss's powers is he can like split his body and basically disassemble it into like long tendrily ribbon things, but also I guess like his chest is some like bag of holding for you
basically
out there. Kind of like, yeah. And
he's essentially a combination of a couple stands from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yes.
Because there are definitely characters who have those powers.
So, yeah, Quicksilver like shoves his head in his own like endless chest cavity.
Right.
And he like sucks into himself. And the sucking and scraping noises of Abyss falling into the endless dimensional void of his own body.
Right. It's disturbing.
So you think he's dead.
Yeah. And then just like,
and they go back
in what I feel is like a very like, it's very indicative of like the style of this whole thing. It says, but the agonized wails are muted by crying of a different kind, tears born of joy and relief, and the knowledge that the life of one child was well worth the risk they took. Like, it's just it's so ridiculously melodramatic all the time.
If the writers were just patting themselves all on the back.
They were furiously masturbating when they wrote this.
And at the end, we get Apocalypse being like, enough, I grow weary of this game. And then he's going to see who's truly fit to survive.
Which he does that. It's literally, there's so many scenes like that.
Yeah.
And it's like the post credits of Avengers 2 with Thanos like grabbing the gauntlet, like, I'll do it myself. It's literally that over and over and over and over again.
So it's at the end of this one, it's like next Apocalypse versus Magneto. And I'm like, oh, sweet. So they're going to actually throw down. Nope. Doesn't happen. So
nope. Factor X, more brother on brother angst.
Yeah. Is there anything worth saying about this?
So basically nothing really happens in the issue other than like a lot of standing around. They get Lorna and she's tortured by Beast because in case you didn't realize he is evil. But then Scott Summers, he basically helps her escape to Avalon.
Right.
That's
and
right.
At the very end, Havoc's like, yeah, I've got you this time, brother. Yeah. And
yes, that's right. He sees him helping him helping her. And he's like, yeah, got you. Right.
Got him.
Yeah. The whole point of that issue was just to get to that last like 3 pages.
So Weapon X, it looks like, this is the other side of that evacuation that the X-Men were helping on, where they're arriving on the shores of Europe. Yeah. And Jean is helping the humans come through like checkpoints and stuff. And again, more angular shape shapey face tattoos on Jean. And then, oh no, things are going well. For some, I guess Apocalypse just likes to like fuck with them because he sent that magma.
Oh yeah,
by herself
all the time, and he sends like another bunch of dudes who are just like, let's kill a bunch of humans right now, and they just start shooting, and they kick their asses, which is good.
Yep, there's like a little fight. Wolverine kicks ass. That's about it. Again, he has another conversation with Yuriko, who is a love interest of regular Wolverine.
Right.
There was something
not much.
There was something deeply uncomfortable about her calling him Logan-san all the time. Like I'm sure that like there's that it characteristically makes sense, but there's just something really weird about her calling him a Logan-san.
One of the best panels of Wolverine ever is the one where he's in a kimono and saying like "Konnichiwa, Gaijin" to Cyclops.
Dear God. But while they're talking, like the flagship of their big Zeppelin armada, like there's an explosion.
Oh yeah, the Human Council have a Zeppelin armada, by the way.
Right. This is how you know they're in a post-apocalyptic.
Oh yeah, did we not mention that?
Yeah, no. This is how you know they're in an apocalyptic story arc, is because there's giant Zeppelin fleets everywhere for no reason.
Mm-hmm. And Weapon X jumps out to fall down. This is the one where I think you alluded to it earlier.
Oh yeah, I referenced this before. Where he's trying to judge his falling speed so that the explosion doesn't like kill him as he's falling.
Yeah. He's basically jumping through flames to get there. And then we see more. So there's this a conceit of this world. There's just these things called altered humans, who are humans who want to be Apocalypse fanboys. So they're given like cybernetic powers, essentially. And they're led by this guy, Pierce, who is, man, of all the choices, like you give, he's going to end up being the nemesis that Wolverine tangles with, like throughout the Weapon X arc. It's like, that's the best he got.
Yeah, he just has like big hands and claws and
big pointy hands that extend out.
He's super dumb and real boring.
And you give one of like arguably your most, if not your top 3 most popular characters at the time of this arc, like the lamest nemesis for his personal journey.
Insanely stupid.
Yeah. So, Wolverine or the Weapon X, because he's not Wolverine.
Weapon X
in this. They had a completely different character in the Volume 1 who was Wolverine.
Everyone's favorite character in the story arc, Wolverine.
Yeah. All his hair gets burned off. He fucks up the bad guys. And then
he gets,
while like everything is on fire, he has like a psychic premonition because they have a link. Jean.
And then he rides after her.
She's taken off
on
a
motorcycle, and he jumps off the motorcycle onto the biplane that she's flying.
So, does his healing factor, does that count for his hair too?
Apparently so, because his hair is literally growing back panel by panel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the Human Council had decided they're going to nuke America. Basically.
Yeah.
And Jean feels like that's not right to kill because there'll be too many innocent people killed. So she's going to warn them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so
they kiss and she flies away.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So she basically is like, if you don't want me to warn them, you have to kill me. And of course he doesn't do it.
Of course not.
But, and that's how that panel ends, with him looking off into the distance, all angsty like. But that's what Logan does, so he gets away with it.
Okay, now that takes us into the next issue, and we're nearly at the end of Volume 2. This takes us into the next thing of Gambit and the externals, is it?
Uh-huh.
Yep, this is where they come out the other end of the portal across the galaxy.
Okay, where the heck are we?
We're just gonna real briefly talk about this, because there's no way we can like recap it. This is hands down one of the dumbest things in this whole story.
Hey now, it's where no external has gone before.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, so basically they come through the portal and they are immediately accosted by the aliens on this planet, and Richter's there as well, and he teams up with the bad aliens, and then they run away to try and get the crystal and stuff. And it's
It's the Imperial Guard of the Shi'ar Empire, led by Gladiator. Again, if anyone's grew up watching the 90s X-Men cartoon, there was a whole arc with these people, so they look kind of familiar to you.
Yeah. I was wondering why
Gladiator's basically like, what if Superman had purple skin and a giant fucking mohawk?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we've all had that thought.
Yeah. And they basically are just like, this was just one of the points where I almost gave up reading because there's just such a dense and irrelevant info dump about like the royal history of this planet and how it relates to the McCran crystal. And I'm just like, I don't give a shit about any of this. It's so dumb.
You literally did not need any of this. You could have cut the whole thing out. Right. You could have just been like, we need to go back in time, and also we need someone to like pinpoint. Yeah. And it could, you know what your 3 prongs could have been for a tighter story? We need someone who can go back in time. We need someone who can pinpoint the right reality, and we need to kill Apocalypse so he can't like fuck with it because he can kind of do anything.
Yeah,
right.
So those should have been the 3 missions: kill Apocalypse and go in like so he can't stop,
or at least keep him occupied.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like create a diversion while this happens. This whole thing with this whole
issue was just an excuse to get them teamed up with the Starjammers, which I'm assuming is a team they were pushing at the time.
So they were so if you remember, we talked about in volume 1 with the Summers brothers, their dad, crash landed.
Oh, that's abducted. Right. Yeah.
So in like the normal Marvel canon, he is the leader of the Starjammers.
Well, I'll be damned. It was still dumb. It was
still dumb. So they get rescued, and they're going to help them. The Starjammers are going to help them steal the crystal or break in. And for no reason, the final image of volume 2 is Gambit ripping out some random cables, cords from the spaceship console.
I was really confused as to what the point of that was.
That's the last for volume 2. That's the last image. And there's no explanation why he did that or what the point of it was. He rips out a handful of random cords and cables from a starship control panel and holds it up.
I mean, what more do you need?
Oh my God. I just like reading this.
Okay, so guys, volume 2, let's get some thoughts on this. Kieran, I'm not sure. I think I'm not clear on what your thoughts were. Why don't you? You liked it, right?
Yeah, it was great. It was so good. I read it a million times. Reading this was exhausting. Like the art is not good. The designs are like, I get they're a product of their time, but they're not good either. The writing is horrific and all over the place. None of the stories really make a lot of sense. There's so many moments that they're like, and this happens, and they didn't earn any of this. But I will expand on this later when we get into our final thoughts, like overall, and we've like finished the whole thing. My biggest issue, especially with volume 2, is that Age of Apocalypse is a post-apocalyptic, like dystopian future that is just misery without end. There is no point to anything that they do ever. It is just a constant barrage of death and suffering simply so they can constantly remind you how awful it is to be living under apocalypse. There are so many intros in so many of these books where it's just like, welcome to the Age of Apocalypse. Remember, man, it sucks ass to live here. Blah. And I'm just like, I get it. I get that it is bad, but you're not doing anything with any of this. It's like there's no point to the Age of Apocalypse other than it's bad.
It's all variations of like, welcome to the Age of Apocalypse, where a child's hopes and dreams vanish like ripples in a muddy puddle.
It's so hackneyed and overwritten. Like, it's just like, welcome to America. Once the land of the brave and the free. Now the land of the dead. What? And it's just like,
I should get, so the original like gold covered trade paperbacks. I'm seeing if I got one at arm's length. The back of them all say in big red letters, like the back page of these trades I'll say America is dead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the volume 3, like the first comic within that has that exact thing, like the big red letters and like say America is dead, and then the summary.
Oh, it's right there. Yeah.
Okay, so we've been going for a while. We were really trying to get 2 and 3 done, but obviously that isn't going to happen. We apologize. So join us next week. We will cover 3 and 4. We're determined
it will be finished.
To cram those both into one beautiful episode. And we do have to say, because we've read more, than just what we've covered, that it does kind of start coming together a bit more in the next volume. So if you've just been completely confused by what we've been talking about so far, things like a lot of these little plot threads finally come together. So it's still a mess, but it's like a little more manageable of a mess, I feel like, in volume 3. So, Pat, why don't you tell people where they can find you online?
Yeah, I'd say, Twitter is the best place. That's where I'm the most active. I'm at the Pat Edwards. I'm also have a website, thepatedwards.com, where, those two things will point you in the right direction. If God forbid, if you like my personality, I'm sorry for you. Or you can buy, different books I've published.
I was going to say, you really need to pimp the books, if nothing else. Come on now.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I said last time, the big thing is my book, Space Tripping, my novel. It's an ebook, paperback, and Audible available. I've got one short story that was published in an anthology called Escape. I got a couple more that may be published in the near future.
Nice.
And I got a podcast myself called Let's Rewatch, where we rewatch movies we loved in our youth and see if they're still any good. We kind of run the gamut of, it's not another like bad movie review. We do really good movies too. We just see if they hold up, or we do movies that we remember being really good and learn that that was a product of our childhood being dumb.
Yep. I think we've all been there.
Yep.
So, all right, Kieran, where can people find you?
You can find me online. I'm at Mr. K_Bennett on Twitter. You can also check out my Dungeons and Dragons podcast. It's at for CNG podcast on Twitter. Jonah, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh man, I'm on Twitter at Spambot, and also I have my own Patreon now where there are short stories ripe for the picking, and that's at patreon.com/Jonah. So it's pretty easy to remember. And that's going to do it. So, tune in next week and we will cover the rest of this beast, the Age of Apocalypse. And, we're going to have to schedule a later recording after that where we can figure out what a really good X-Men story is that's like short, that we can cover in one episode and we'll all really, really enjoy and go, oh yeah, we love the X-Men. Here's why.
Nice palate cleanser.
We promise. This is what happened when we tried to review one of the Spider-Man ones with Ben from Transformation Sequence 2. We were like, man, next time we're going to have to review a good Spider-Man comic.
I had said it, I think when we did our last time we recorded the first part of this series we're doing, is that what's funny that we're doing this is this is basically a comic book format of our Let's Rewatch podcast, right? It's something I loved when I was a kid, and now I'm revisiting and being like, oh no, what a dumb dummy you were, young Patrick.
All right. Well, with that, we will see you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. I love you. And also, I'm really sorry.